BLINDSPOT again. It's a Redskin.
Right on, writers. Welcome, first-time viewers, to the Books by Adrian author platform, and this is the brand spanking new Tuber Book Club. Welcome. I am your host, Adrian Santiago, and I will have with me today two lovely co-hosts, and we are going to be talking all about the first half of Blind Spot by Kent Shawn. So I'm not going to waste too much time. If you're new, like, comment, subscribe, hit all that stuff downstairs, and I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad you're here for a great show. We got a lot of people in the chat. It's going to be fun. Let's go ahead and welcome our guests. First up, we have Miss Shannon D. Houston. Welcome, Shannon. Hello.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for being a part of this. And we also have today with us Jenna O'Malley.
Hello, lovelies.
Hello. Hiya. How are you?
I'm tired. I've been teaching all day, so let's keep me right in teacher brain and do this.
This sounds like you're right in the right mode as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, let's do it. Shannon, Jenna, thank you so much for being with us today. Colin and T.E. Butcher, Tyler, were not able to be with us today. Where's my English? They had to cancel, but they will be with us next time. And hopefully they can share as much of their thoughts as possible next time so that we can get a good idea of what they thought of this book. Shannon, for anyone new to you and what you are and what you do, let them know. And then we'll go to Jenna after that. Shannon?
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Shannon. I write under the pen name S.D. Houston, author of a YA fantasy series, Clash of Goddesses, with the third book coming out this year in June. And I also have a YouTube channel under the same name of S.D. Houston, where you can find content about publishing and writing and see my self-publishing journey and everything that I'm going through. And I'm also currently working with my partner, who will introduce herself next, on a big event for the YouTube AuthorTube community, and that is the AuthorTube Writing Conference that's coming in July. Right now, we have applications open for speakers and guest speakers who would like to present information on writing and or publishing.
Very nice. Thank you very, very much. Okay. Jenna, how about you? What do you got going on these days?
Oh my goodness, it's more like what don't I have going on these days? First and foremost, thank you very much for having us here this evening, good sir. I am Jenna O'Malley, your sole writer, author of the Arsinoe Forest Alliance, a historical fantasy, X-Sword and Sorcery, X-Fade to Black, paranormal romance. Book 3 comes out in T-minus 60 days.
Whoa.
Yes. Somebody else has a book coming out right after mine that she didn't say. Boo-hoo. But it's going to be an epic week for both of us, of course. Also, I'm the other part of the AuthorTube Writing Conference, which I'm working on a video for an update to come out hopefully within the next week or so on the street teams and things going on behind the scenes to help us with a successful launch in July.
Very nice. I love it.
I did mention that I have a book coming out in June.
Did I miss that part? I'm sorry. I have the Pimlico racetrack of cats going on right now in the bedroom, unfortunately, because they think I'm all off work.
Well, and I think you know your exact date of 1 June, but I'm thinking 6 June will be my published date, but I don't know when it's going to be. So that's why I didn't say anything about that.
Yep.
Well, today we're going to be talking about Blind Spot by Kent Shawn. Before we dive into our initial thoughts, let's say hello to everybody in the chat. We got a lot of people up in there. Richard was the first through the door other than Shannon here. Hello, Richard. What's up, dude? Howdy. Cheesecake Man, I must say you are new to me. I don't know who you are,
He's
but welcome.
He's the other half of the married part to this.
Beautiful. Nice to see some support from the spouses. My wife is never in the chat. Hope the beginning of your week is going well. Thank you, Jenna. All right. Amelia's here. Amelia. So good to see you. I feel like I don't get to see you anymore. All right, everybody. I think that's it. Oh, there's a Daniel in here. You're new to me too. Hello, Daniel. How are you? Welcome. Welcome. Cindy, I believe I've seen you at least once before. Welcome. Kelly, you're another new one. Lots of new people. Awesome. Welcome. It's so good to meet all of you. Amber, hello. Clara. Okay. So let's dive on into this thing. So Blind Spot by Kent Shawn is so far in these first 19 chapters a lot more than I expected. Even having read Forbidden, which is the sequel to this, it follows a different main character. So in diving into this one, it was very, very new to me. I want to go over some initial thoughts from my co-panelists here, and then I'll jump in after that. Who wants to go first? Shannon?
Sure, since you called me out.
Initial thoughts of the first half of the book.
Yes. So yes, I was surprised by how quick it moves. Yet there's only a little bit that happens in each scene that you get.
Yeah,
So,
each chapter is basically a scene, right? It's like one condensed scene.
Yes, and it makes it feel like the pace is really fast, but then you're spanning only like what, an hour, 2 hours, the first few chapters.
Yeah, from what I understand, the whole book is just going to be one night, so it's moving at a clip. Yeah.
Yes. So when you think, oh, this whole book is like in one night, yet it feels like it moves really fast. And so I've really enjoyed moving through the story so quickly and the multiple points of view. So my initial thoughts, I'm liking it so far. We were supposed to stop at chapter 19, or at least I don't know if we were supposed to, but I couldn't stop there. That was a cliffhanger. I had to continue on.
It was a pretty hardcore cliffhanger too. I was very tempted to continue on, but I just barely made it to chapter 19 before today. So I was like, you know what? I'm good. I made it.
Yeah.
Jenna, how about yourself?
It's a really good read during lunch. I'll admit, if you're having a rough work day and you just need to zap out into somebody else's problems, this book's a good choice for that.
And it's full of problems, I'll tell you what.
Exactly. I'm kind of wondering how everything's going to get resolved, and if it's a different character for the sequel, what is going to be left over at this point.
Yeah. And there's just so much going on with this particular character, and I definitely expected this whole like thriller vibe, and I knew from the sequel that there was this whole like religious connotation to everything as well, the angels and demons side of things. What I didn't expect was this whole like body swap, mistaken identity thing going on. Again, not to spoil too much for anybody, it's just it's part of the plot of the book is that you're kind of going through this mistaken identity plot. And it's stressful as hell, man. It'll get you.
It makes you feel sorry for someone who might have actually lived that all the more, I think.
Sure,
because it nailed it, but didn't over exaggerate it, if that makes sense.
As for the chat, by the way, guys, go ahead and throw in your initial spoiler-free thoughts into the chat as well, and I'll throw them up onto the screen as we go here. But yeah, he's... Kent, the writer, is as Jared in the chat here says, is the master of keeping people in trouble at all times, and I definitely feel that. Like anytime that like, I mean, every time a new chapter starts, I'm always just like, oh boy, this is gonna be really bad, really fast. It's just it goes fast. It does move at a clip though, man. And when I first pitched the idea of this book club and asked if we wanted to do it in like 2 sittings or 4, with me being a mostly pretty slow reader and having very little time with novels, I tend to take a long time to get through them. So I thought that we would need a whole 4 streams to get through it. But no, this thing moves fast. It moves at a clip. Love the Lucifer character. Yep. I'm a big fan as well. Okay. This book reminded me of his short story collection, Evil Grows in the Dark. Yeah, there was a couple in there that also shared kind of like this vibe, right? And for someone, Kent, who expresses on a fairly regular basis that he's not a religious person in general, it felt like this was written by a lifelong Christian. He got so much, like, I mean, I grew up in a Christian family. Like, the stuff that he's talking about fictionally here is stuff that we studied and learned about as if it was real, and he's nailing it. Like he's really nailing it. Everything all the way down to, the relationships between the angels and each other, the demons and each other, everybody and the boss as they call him, or God. Very, very, very cool. What do you guys think about all that? The religious angle of everything.
I found it fascinating. And, obviously there were some names that are really well known if you're not deep into religion, like Michael, Michael's name.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know Beharit. I don't know how you would say that name.
I
don't
think
know.
I think it's Beirut.
Favorite.
Barrett.
Yep.
Beirut.
I didn't recognize that name, so I tried to research it, and I couldn't find anything on it really. So I'm kind of curious what you guys think about that one.
Yeah, Beirut, I'm trying to nail down myself. Like you, I didn't go like researching it because I didn't want to get spoiled on what he may or may not be. But it's definitely a name that I didn't recognize even with my background in all this. So yeah, but ones like Michael definitely stand out.
Yeah.
And Wainwright, whose other name I am spacing on starts with a C. He's another one that I'm like, what's this guy all about? And where's he gonna lead with all this?
I wondered for those angel names that we don't recognize if it pulled on another culture, because angels aren't necessarily solely a Christian thing. We call
Sure.
them that. That might be our word for it. But I wondered if they took similar entities from other cultures. That's
Yeah.
kind of where my brain went, because I couldn't find much either just at a quick glance research, either on the names
Yeah.
or, like you were saying, Christian upbringing. It didn't trip my brain too much on whose story is that. Though nice add in as somebody who's Irish Catholic upbringing. I like the mob feel with the angels. I will admit that.
The whole like gangster thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
like a gangster.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
that theme is overall the whole book. Everybody's in a gang of some type.
Yeah, everybody belongs to like a clique, and they all have like hierarchy within them, and I, if you have that background, it makes it really interesting to see it, and if you don't, it makes it really interesting to figure it out. You know what I mean? Like, okay, so this guy answers to this guy, and his relationship with this other group is this. It can be very layered like that. What did we all think of that gritty, hard-boiled narrative voice Kent adopted for this one? By hard-boiled, I'm getting that crime gangster kind of thing, right?
Mystery
That what we're talking-
detective.
Film noir mystery detective is what I felt like at one point. I
A
said
little bit.
this could be a new film noir film, book turned film quite easily.
Yeah, and it's really impressive because as a book that is not necessarily about like crime drama in the typical sense, we're talking about angels and demons here, like doing stuff. It's pretty interesting that he can pull off that vibe, that vibe of almost Goodfellas meets like Heat. There's like a little bit of that in there. I like it. Cool flavors. He beta read this book. Yep.
You are so lucky, Richard. You are
I saw
so lucky.
I saw
It
like
do-
the thank you note at the end
Yeah.
to all the people who beta read.
Oh, I wanted to mention. I don't know if you guys caught it. The new introduction in this new version of the book that he put in there for our book club. I was very very pleased to see that. Kent's a stand up dude, so hats off to Kent for the shout out in the book. Yes, it felt like Christian fiction, and I used to read Christian fiction, and it very much felt like that. In fact, I was getting like real hard vibes from a book I read once called This Present Darkness. I don't know if
Get
you guys
out
are
of my
familiar.
head. Yes.
Oh!
I've read that. It's been a long time, but I've read it.
Oh man, I read it as a kid. It's been a very long time for me too. I couldn't like quote things from it necessarily or even really like go over too much about the plot, but I just remember the idea of this like small town and this pastor or priest within it who's trying to essentially save the town, if I remember correctly, through prayer. And then as the town prays, they empower the angels in a war against the demons and vice versa. And so like you're getting these two sides, the reality and then the spiritual side with the angels and the demons fight. I'm so glad that you read that because I thought I wouldn't have anybody to like point at this to. It very much feels like that book.
Mama Maggie says she's read the same book that you guys read too.
Oh, cool. I'm gonna get caught up on the chat here. Harriet Hardy character, feel like she's the real hero of the story, going to
Yeah.
avenge the mentor. I'm rooting for her. Yeah, I definitely feel that too. Which is another interesting thing that you're in many ways following an anti-hero because he's kind of the hero of the story, but he's also kind of the villain of the story, and
right.
it that alone is very very interesting. Provides a lot of problems and tension, and it's cool because the hero is a different character. Like you're almost seeing the hero chase down the villain. It's pretty cool. World building, very good
Oh
stuff.
yes.
Mhm.
Very good stuff.
He's good
Let me
at setting
see.
the scene.
Looked up the angel names. Some I found, others not so much. I wonder
Yep.
if maybe there's like alternate names that he's using or something like that.
There,
Like maybe it's a
there is
reference to another
one.
one.
The Beharit. Sorry, I'm tone deaf. So I don't hear how to say the words. But the Beharit, whatever it is, there is a version that was really close to it, but it was a female angel.
Mm,
So
I
yeah.
interesting.
wonder if he
Also,
didn't care to gender bend
Maybe.
then.
yeah.
Maybe.
Or I also looked up the etymology, and it means to stick.
Gotcha. Okay. Some she did not recognize. Good call on the cross references. Yep, yep. What do we got? Saw Ken on a stream where he talked about studying a bunch of different cultures and religions to create his angels and demons, and
Makes
it's
it
apparent.
very approachable.
Yeah, he gets it pretty darn good. Martin, good evening. The devil. Oh, that was another thing. Calling the main or calling Rehnquist the devil of L.A.
Devil.
when
Yeah.
when Lucifer is a straight up character in this book. Like that's
Yeah.
crazy. That's almost noir. Yep, yep. Almost. Goodfellas. Why are we talking about? Oh my God. This guy. Here we go. And any chance he gets, he'll never pass it up. All right. Let's start diving into a little bit more spoiler talk. Anybody in the chat, if you have not read it, I highly recommend it. I don't know if anybody else here does, but I really do. And I can't wait to finish it and talk more about it afterwards. Any last non-spoiler talks for anybody who doesn't want to be spoiled on the book before we shift over to that?
And I guess this is also final warning to leave if you don't want the spoilers too.
Kinda? Go buy the book, go read it. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. So I took notes from every chapter. I don't expect everyone to have done that, but I did. And one of my favorite things to do is to pick out a really cool quote or a great line from each one, something that like stood out to me or hit me. So we'll go through those chapter by chapter, and let's see here. So we started in chapter 1 with this character Shifty, who I found wildly entertaining. Everything that he did, he always like waited to see if it caused mayhem. Like when he threw a cigarette out the window, he waited to see if it hit somebody. He threw a bottle out the window, he waited to see if it hit somebody. He just like casually creating chaos, and I could appreciate that in a character, especially when it's chapter 1. The quote that I pulled out from him was when he heard the knock at the door, and he says to himself in regards to the person behind the door, "You're sweating in that body of you're sweating in that body of yours, aren't you?" Just the idea of like sweating in a body, not that your body is sweating, but that you are sweating in the body. Already like setting up these things about like possession and bodies and stuff like that. Any thoughts on chapter 1, ladies? How it opened up, the whole opening of the book.
Well, it set that whole dark noir scene right there from the very beginning.
Even with the last line of the chapter, it would be a wild time in the old town tonight. It sounds like the sign off to an opening of a film noir, and I'm like, where's the trumpets?
It sounds
Where's
like
the
something
sax?
straight out of Sin City.
Bingo.
Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah.
thinking.
Yeah.
I had the whole black and white like
Yep, just
color,
color,
like,
yeah.
everything. Yep.
Yeah, for sure. Amber was saying that she felt like it was set in many times. Wainwright, a 30s gumshoe, Hardy, a modern cop, John, a more tortured 90s action hero, and I can totally see all three of those, absolutely.
Yeah.
John Damien thing was one to wrap your head around for sure. Yeah. The John,
Yeah.
So now that we're in spoiler territory, so John Benz, our lead character, wakes up in the body of Damien Rehnquist, who is the villain of the story for all intents and purposes, and referred to as the devil of L.A. This big like crime boss essentially, and that's it's such an interesting little like premise because everywhere he goes, later on when we get to his meeting with Michael, that one more than anything like really blew my mind because of the way that he like expected Michael to like see him and thought that he did, and then when he learns that he doesn't, oh, never mind. We'll get to that in a minute. I really don't think the angels and demons felt religious at all. More like just another set of competing cops and criminals. He definitely writes it that way, right? Like they're more casual characters, and the way that they interact with each other is far more human than you might expect. Now, not to say that he has religious intent in the story at all, but I definitely like. There's a lot of like modern Christian and Catholic, undertones and all that kind of stuff. Hierarchy of the angels, all that kind of stuff. The spheres that he talks about with the different groupings of angels and stuff. All that stuff is straight out of Christianity for the most part.
But I would say Michael's role in the book, I think, was probably the most religious.
Yeah, I mean, when you put the angel Michael in there, you're pretty much establishing it's these guys.
Yeah.
I mean, his whole purpose in the book too was to try to, help everyone attain, freedom from their sin or whatever.
Sure.
I wonder if he felt
Redemption.
like he was spreading himself too thin too early in the book for his sake, not for the reader's sake, I mean, or detriment.
So, elaborate.
The level of stressors packed on him, I guess it's the whole, you associate the name with a certain level of responsibility.
Yeah.
And I think the character felt it sooner than I was maybe anticipating as the reader.
Gotcha. Interesting. Oh, we were saying in the green room before we went live that one of the things that I really like is that we're diving into the end of this hero's story, so to speak. Like this John Benz guy has had a storied past, lots of adventures. He's a legendary cop hero in his town, and we essentially start with him dead and his consciousness in the body of another. And every time he thinks back to the golden days, so to speak, and all the things that came before, I love that stuff because it builds so much history for your character. And
So,
yes.
sorry, go ahead.
No, you.
No. Okay.
I'm done.
Oh, okay. So I know that it seems very clear that John is in Damien's body, at least his consciousness.
As far
But
as
I've
I know
kind of
so
picked
far,
up-
yeah.
Yeah, I've kind of picked up a couple things, like when he talks about the mirror, I wrote it down, a mirror held to a dark soul. It makes me wonder, is John really in his body, or is it that Damien's just being given an insight into one of his victims?
That's interesting.
I don't know. I haven't read the whole book, so I don't know.
Yeah, me neither.
But
Yeah, I don't either. But that's good. Let's talk about that. Well, I definitely feel that he's driving home that it's John Ben's consciousness, but he also establishes that he doesn't have memories. He doesn't necessarily remember everything about himself or his life. And that could be because he's not in his body. It could also be because it's not really his consciousness, and this is something that Rehnquist is going through. But one of the things that that John Ben says to himself is that he can't be crazy because he's questioning himself. He's doubting himself, and a crazy person is the last one to find out that they're crazy. So this idea that he knows who he is, he's so sure of who he is. Now he just has to figure out why this has happened, how it has happened, and how to fix it. And then you have this character Wainwright, right? Who, up to where I've read so far, we've learned that he was there when this thing happened, when John was choked and his neck snapped at the hands of Rehnquist. Here comes Wainwright, says something, we don't know what he said, and then Rehnquist wakes up in the car park basement with John Benz in his head. So something happened there. And again, as I said before, we don't know if it's a body swap or if it's a mistaken identity, or like you're saying, maybe Rehnquist is relating to one of his victims. But he's really relating to it because one of the things that tortures him is the image of Rehnquist killing his wife. So in the same body, he is both victim and killer at the same time. Just crazy. Crazy.
Oh, yes, this part.
Yes, we're in spoilers now. Let's talk. Let's see here. Shifty makes my skin crawl. He has too much
Yes,
fun
me
being back.
too.
Yeah, the whole thing
Yes.
where he was cutting up
Ugh.
the girl and
Yes.
everything, like
Into
so
the tree.
casually about it. He reminds me of what's his name from the Sandman. Neil Gaiman's The Sandman.
Oh, yes. Oh, God.
Starts with a C as well. He's got like teeth in his eyes and stuff. What's his name? Damn it. I'll look him up.
I was just about to say Google.
Yeah. Okay. Sandman. Neil Gaiman.
Because that's been a while, too. Jeez.
Yeah, it has been a while. What is
Ben says
Corinthian?
Corinthian.
what is it?
Corinthian? That
Corinthian?
looks
The Corinthian. That's
accurate.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Yes. So Shifty definitely gave me Corinthian vibes for sure. Richard.
I know.
Let me see what else here. Michael was just a straight up Archangel Michael. Yeah, like no ends, its, or buts about it. And I felt it before he confirms it in that chapter where he says that you would think that he's just an old man that's like asleep or whatever and helpless, but you'd be wrong. And I'm like, Michael?
Uh-huh.
50, like he was a modern James Dean. Yeah, he's definitely a handsome bloke.
For sure, for sure.
Lots of opinions in the chat. I love how engaged everyone is. Sick and tired of dealing with humanity. A really different take on the angel. Yeah, he's kind of like way more like chill, but also like fed up at the same time. It's kind
I
of
don't
interesting.
blame him.
Me neither. It's been a long time. Let me see here. I think you're right with the second one. I don't remember what he was speaking in reference to, but he thinks
When I
you're
was
right.
talking about instead of John actually being in his body, that he might just be seeing.
Yeah, I wonder. I really do. Certainly interested as to what people make of that twist, though, when the time comes. Hey, man,
But you know it's coming.
quit teasing the spoilers, man. Seems like John is completely gone, but that he can influence Damien to be better for as long as he remains before passing on. Yes, but he's also influenced by Damien, isn't he? Because he'll have moments where
It's true.
his friends, cops, are showing up, and his instinct is to murder all of them. You know,
Ebb and flow, baby. Ebb and flow.
Yeah, and he mentions it in his own. He's like, I really want to kill everybody right now, so I should get out.
But you know how
Yes.
you talk about like the devil and the angel on the shoulders, right? Well, maybe
Sure.
John is just like the devil or the angel on his shoulder. So sometimes he makes his own choices beyond what John is able to influence him on.
See, for me, it feels almost like I read a lot of George Martin stuff. I read a lot of A Song of Ice and Fire over and over again, and it reminds me of the wargs, right? Anybody who's read them, it's a little more fleshed out in the books than it is on the shows. But like a warg is a character who can transfer his consciousness into the body of an animal, but he doesn't just replace the mind and instincts of that animal. They're both in there. The animal's still in there, and so is this person that's living in the body. And because they're both there, they influence each other, and they kind of mind meld. And if you spend too much time in that body, you would just go wild, so to speak, and your consciousness would just become one with that animal, and you would just become an animal. And that's kind of what it reminds me of when he's driving, right? Like he's in the driver's seat in Rehnquist's body, but Rehnquist is the one who's like, his evil is like too strong for him to resist all the time. You know what I mean? And it feels like Rehnquist is like trying to push into him, so to speak, and sort of mind meld a little bit. When Rehnquist is talking to him, asking him questions like, oh, what do you think about this? He's kind of like pushing him towards his own side, so to speak, I think.
If not a lot of guiding questions per se, even if they're statements, it's very what A, B, C, D. You could see he is building rabbit holes of thought every time he talks.
Yeah. I love that so many people have read on ahead or have read it before and they're psyched about the twist. I don't know what the twist is. I can't wait to see it. Yes, the Corinthian. That's who it was. He drops a lot of hints. I felt like I should have figured it out sooner. His story, Lydia, from the short story collection, is the best twist ending I have. That's a good one, too. I remember that one. Figured out what was going on when he got to his house and started talking to himself. Yeah, when he went to his own house and established that nobody knows where that house is but him. He's in there with you, buddy. I have not finished the book, but it seems to me that when Wainwright confronted him in the tower, he inflicted the mirror on him. He
Yeah,
waded
and he said a
into the
word
middle of the
too.
gunfight. Yeah, he said something. They drive that home that he said something.
Hmm.
Wow. All right. I can't wait to find out the twists and turns. Okay, I'm gonna go through some of my favorite quotes here. If you guys have anything,
Yeah,
please jump in. Yes,
have
go,
two
go for it.
that I wrote down. Oh, you want me to say it? Okay, let me
Yeah, go
find it
ahead.
here.
Yeah,
I've got the
absolutely.
physical book, so I got to go to the page.
Oh, okay. Well, I got my notes here. I'll go for one too. Oh, one one thing that I clashed up against with though was in I want to say it was in chapter one. It was in chapter one. There's a line where he says that it sounds like a novel, and it's like that meta thing that happens sometimes where like a
Hmm.
character will
Break the
refer that
fourth wall.
yeah, and it just kind of like just took me out of it just a little bit. It like just
Yeah.
but that's me.
Are you glad that it happened earlier in the story and not later, though?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, get out of the way. And, because it's one of those things where, like, a writer might put that in there thinking, oh, it's kind of cool and meta. And it's kind of like what Eminem does when he goes up against another battle rapper. He makes fun of himself first so that the person can't say anything to him. That's what
Hmm.
it always feels like when a writer does something like that, where they throw in a little meta thing and it's almost so the reader won't do it. And it's like, well, I wasn't necessarily gonna. Like, don't do it. Shannon, did you find your quote?
Yeah. And the two things that I picked out was just for the imagery or the turn of phrase mainly, but in chapter 8, um, I liked it. So it's when Michael gets into his car. He says, the little space was a blaze of light that dimmed slightly as the door finally went up, and the silky darkness outside soaked up some of the twin halogens for fury. Just love some of the imagery he creates.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Just very simple little word choices. It's not over
Hard
the
punching.
top. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the vocab choices, when they are, 25, 50-cent piece vocab words, they're used to where anyone can figure them out without having to go to a dictionary, I think.
Mm.
And that's coming from
And
someone who teaches this as a skill to kids who can't read. So,
Mm.
and he
I like
always
that.
includes a noun that relates to his time period. So like the halogen. So
Mm-hmm.
halogen lights, so
Mm-hmm.
because he could have just said lights or he could have just said bright light or car
Yeah.
light. But he
Headlights.
said
Yeah.
halogen. It was very specific. Halogen light. So the adjective for the noun.
There was a moment in chapter two where John was thinking back and he says, and I quote, "It was the memory of a scream, Annie's scream." And this, I wrote that down as a quote that I like because it harkens back in my mind to I don't know if anybody here watches Dexter, but
Yes.
in season one when he's finally getting his flashbacks to his repressed memories of that awful day in the shipping
Mhm.
container, the way that they sound edit that sequence where he's remembering those memories, the screams of the children being almost far away and kind of echoey, that's what I'm like feeling with that when he's remembering the screams of his dying wife, but it's like the memory of a scream, not the scream itself.
and it's very important to note in a book about, I think, a book about cops, crime, and so on, that it's a memory, because what do you say about bystanders? The further the memory goes on,
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
the less likely you can trust
You
it.
remember it
Mm-hmm.
correctly.
And that's definitely something that, depending on who's in control up here, that could or could not be at the forefront too.
Mm-hmm. Here's another one. A smooth, hard truth like the cold metal of the door John leaned against. That's another one like what you were talking about, Shannon, where
Yeah.
he's just throwing in these these metaphors that are just so like they're punchy. Like you just get like a real clear vision right away. Oh, oh, look who's here. What do you want, Felix? My kid just walked in. Sorry, guys.
He's so kind.
Felix, get out of here. His little voice 2 feet off the ground. All right. Okay, so I have a question. He uses this expression twice, and I'm not familiar with it. Walking on bullets. I've heard of like walking on eggshells, for example, but he uses the phrase "walk on bullets" twice with John, and I'm not familiar with that expression. If anybody knows what that means.
I'm not familiar with it, but the image in my head isn't so much like walking on eggshells. You got to walk gently because you'll crack them. It's
Right.
more like, are you tripping and falling and skittering and slipping all over the place then? Is
Interesting, because
that
like
the
round little
image?
bullets, like like walking on
Yeah.
marbles or whatever. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Okay, one of my favorite chapters. Let's talk about it. Chapter 7, where John meets up with Michael, and he's there hoping that his friend Michael will see him as John Benz. And when he asks him if he recognizes him, and the guy says yes, Michael says yes. He thinks he's gotten confirmation. Oh, this guy knows who I am. And he starts unloading and burying his soul to this guy, and he calls him Damien, and it just pulls the rug out from everything. That moment tripped me up. I loved it. It was so good. I don't know about you guys, but I loved it.
Yeah, I think I'm with you if this is the right chapter. This is the one with Michael, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so this is the one where you said you knew it was Michael kind of from the very beginning. And I
Yes.
did too, like the angel Michael. So I kind of thought, okay, this is the angel Michael. So when he says, yes, I recognize you, and then he called him Damien, I'm like, well, wait, if he's the angel, wouldn't he possibly know that it's John in there? And that also got me thinking, that also got me thinking, well, John's not really there. He's just been
Right.
thrown onto Damien.
It seems like an ability that the angel Michael would have to recognize, oh, this is, John in the shell of Rehnquist or whatever, but he doesn't.
Yeah.
He recognizes him
He
as
doesn't,
Damien.
as
Yeah.
Damien, which
Yeah.
to me was another clue that it might not actually be John in there.
Kent's messing with us.
He's enjoying it and doing
Yeah.
a fairly good job.
That evil genius. One note that I really liked from that chapter is the idea that John got clean from his addiction after his wife's death, which is usually the other way around. Usually the death of a loved one just sends you deeper into a downward spiral. Almost like her death was his rock bottom. He had nowhere further to go. And I find that really interesting. There's a lot of, like when a married couple, unfortunately, lives through the death of a child or something like that, and the marriage doesn't last long after that. That's a very common thing that happens. And so that's kind of what I'm thinking about with this, is like that idea of like, man, he's lost everything, and you would think that would make him worse, and it actually motivates him to get better. I found that really interesting.
What's that phrase of it's always worse before it gets better, though?
Always darkest before the dawn. Sure. The woman he keeps seeing flashes of with the dark hair, pale skin, red lips, I'm assuming that's his wife in her last moments.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wrote down here for chapter 7, the one with Michael, that this chapter is crazy. That was like my biggest note.
Yes.
Well, too, and for him to know that Damien was there at the same time as John, if that really is John in there, for him to learn, wow, I've been in the same room as my wife's killer this entire time.
The way he wrote that scene was so good too, because that moment where Michael calls John Damien, you can see the react. You can see like John, skidding back. You can see the confusion on Michael's face. Like, what did I say? What's wrong here? You know what I mean? Like that whole thing was just really, really well done. Really well done. Michael is so interesting. He is indeed. He is indeed. Being careful not to set the bullets off. So almost like walking on eggshells, but with the added danger of explosion.
Yeah, I took it more as that way.
I guess I was thinking more like bullets that had already been used, therefore more shells. So that's probably an inference error on my part.
I don't know. I think you can take it at different ways.
Yeah, I think so too. I think Sylvie's onto it here, because he does say that on that chapter. I feel like he's putting two and two together by the end of it. Sure.
Yeah.
Whatever that mirror was, sounds about right. I read Collision, the series prequel, which explains a lot about the John Damien connection. I'm going to have to read it then, man. I'm going to have to read it. Chapter 9 is Harriet Hardy's, one of Harriet Hardy's chapters, and she's a badass. I picture her. Kent talks a lot about how when he first wrote her character, he was Henry Hardy, and he was, this, overweight detective, the gumshoe that you're used to seeing. And as soon as he gender bent her, she became super cool and like really interesting. And I really see that because I'll picture every one of her scenes with, you know, chubby, balding Harry, and it's just not as cool. Like all the stuff she's saying, it's like, not as cool. But when she says it, it's freaking cool. Chapter 10 was giving me Jekyll and Hyde vibes, but more like Green Goblin or Gollum, the whole talking back and forth to each other. Again, like the two consciousness in the one brain. Are their minds melding was my question there.
For something a little more recent, Venom.
Yeah. Yes, it did have very Venom vibes.
Yes, just because there's that... One personality was a little more childish in the willingness to make split-second decisions like Venom was, I would think. More so than maybe other comparisons.
Sure. Interesting.
And again, my mind started going here that I was like, okay, maybe this is not John in there.
Yeah.
By this point, I was really starting to wonder, like, is John really in there? Because the way they went back and forth here, to me, it felt like, no, he's just like a part of his subconscious who's trying to break through. But
yeah. I went back and forth a lot with all that, for sure. The talk of the boss or God's favorite things, one of them being his trees. The thrones and his trees are his most prized possessions. As soon as I saw him mention trees, I was like, oh my God, this guy gets it.
Yo, 100%.
This guy gets it. The tree of life, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, you know, the world tree, if we're going by other religions as well.
The irony that one of us is at least holding it in paper, and therefore it's part tree.
Oh, man. I didn't even think of that. This was my favorite chapter of the first half, the conversations with himself. Then when he stared at his reflection, trying to force his face back the way he wanted it. Great writing. Absolutely.
Very
Absolutely.
much so.
Let's see here. Around chapter 11, I was really getting into the idea of this hero as the villain fighting another hero, you know, because Harriet's after him. Playing the part of the villain, you know, because like he's in the house and he knows that Harriet's outside and he's thinking to himself, that's my buddy, I should go to her. But what comes out of his mouth is stuff like, you'll never get me alive, copper, you know, like shit like that. And then he like runs. so like, it's just like really interesting how like he wants to do something, but his body is just kind of like eye of the tiger and soldiering on.
Yep. Playing on that, what you would expect a cop to do trope.
Yeah.
But sometimes it lands opposite of the coin of what the old joke would say from time to time. Like, it kind of shocked me that Harriet was like, yes, I'm a bleeping cop, but I'm not an assassin. Like that line, I want to say it's chapter 9 or 10.
Yeah.
Just, that was not the opposite side of the coin I was expecting her to say. I'm a cop. Of course I'm going to do my job, was kind of what I was expecting out of her mouth.
But then also the idea of like, hey, this guy has killed a bunch of cops, and cops usually are very quick to kill cop killers. And her whole like, I'm not an assassin. I'm not here to murder people. I'm gonna get justice. Right. It's intense stuff. The idea that he's playing the part of Rehnquist though is so interesting to me, because the more he plays the part, the less likely anyone is to ever believe him that he's not Rehnquist. He's just digging that hole deeper and deeper every time. Yes, I was getting Face Off vibes too. Very cool. I love when he said, I'm coming out, because I believed him. And then you turn to the next chapter. Nope, he ran. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. The next chapter, chapter 12, features Wainwright revealing himself to Harriet in all his glory. That scene was bananas. And the quote from that one for me was, heaven has no patience for your doubt.
100%.
Whew. Again, Kent, are you sure that you don't have some background of this? Because, man, holy crap. That's really hitting it home. Harriet is pretty gritty. Yup. I find that Harriet is more the traditional hero. Yeah, it seems like it, right? Like the out for justice, you know, kind of deal. Yes, Face Off. Gotta love Face Off. As ridiculous as that movie is, I will never stop watching it. It's the best. All right. What else we got here? Oh, the end of let me see here. Oh, in chapter 13 he starts trying to accept his identity and ultimately still can't. Like he actually says to himself, "Okay, like I should just accept the fact that I'm this Rehnquist dude." And yet when he says it, he doesn't quite believe it either. So like it's he himself is back and forth, as flip-floppy as we are on this. And then the idea that he's headed towards the doctor right where they wanted him. Let me see.
And I wondered what kind of mental health related research, if any, went into stuff like that, because it did very much have me in the vein of, is this what somebody searching for a diagnosis rule out may or may not go through too? Like that whole, am I crazy? Am I not crazy? Do I have this? Do I not have this? Is kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm I'm picking up what he's putting down with the whole idea that like him questioning himself is almost proof to himself that he's not crazy. It's not necessarily proof to us. He might still be crazy.
He might be trying to poorly convince us too.
Yeah, he might be out his damn mind. What do we got here? Harriet having a don't freak out.
Yes.
Don't freak out. Ah, hell. Yep. Yep. I loved the traitor hands bit. He tries to kill himself but can't.
Yeah.
Yes.
For that scene, I would love to see the outtakes of an actor filming it.
Oh yeah. Like Mr. Robot.
Yes, good choice.
Yeah.
Mr. Robot and
Yeah.
Fight Club are very similar in that sense. The whole like fighting yourself thing. It's good stuff. Chapter 14. My quote from that chapter was, "A faded star, still handsome and brilliant, but with the best days behind and an uncertain future ahead." And that's his description of Lucifer Morningstar. A faded
When he comes
star.
in. So my next thing that I picked out, because I only picked out two things that stood out to me. My second thing was the very last line, which is him leaving, which is the morning star slipped over the threshold like a horizon and was gone.
I pictured that like him like literally
Yes,
like
me too.
descending just past the door, and the visual like killed me. That was so good. Yes, that's a
Yes.
good one. I love that.
Interesting choice for Lucifer as the last name too. You don't necessarily, in a religious aspect, associate Lucifer with the dawn. It's normally the good guys. So nice
Yeah.
wordplay.
Yeah, but and yet accurate, because that's what he started out as. What right was the Morning Star.
Yeah.
I love when he asks, "Where's your champion? Where's Rehnquist?" This idea that each side has their own champion, and that it's going to be decided between the two of them.
Between those two.
And again, it brings us back to, wait, but that's John.
Yeah.
he was the champion for the other side. What is happening here? It's so nuts. It's so nuts.
If you don't keep track of who's in perspective, forget it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've seen, I kept having this play in my head, but have you seen the TV show Lucifer?
I haven't watched it. I know that it's based
No.
off the Lucifer from the Neil Gaiman comics, so I have that reference, but I haven't watched
Yeah.
the show yet. No.
I just kept like comparing them. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's essentially the same character. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. What else here? Okay. Oh, I by chapter 14, we had a couple references to the blind spot and why why the doctor is able to hide from both sides. I'll admit that I was not in love with the title of this book until the explanation of the blind spot and what it is, and that's when all of a sudden everything kind of clicked for me. It's like, oh, okay, because the when you describe the premise of the book, blind spot is not the title that I would have chosen, and then of course it's the perfect title.
But one thing I question is there a difference in the blind spot in the book and the one on the title? Because the one on the title is all one word, where in the book it's two words.
I wondered if fellow English teacher would catch on to that.
Oh, you guys are too good. I didn't catch that at all. That is, oh man, now I got to rethink everything.
When you teach literature, you're often told spelling stuff like that is purposeful, not
Yeah.
an
It has a purpose.
accident.
Yeah, for sure. All the editing that these books go through, something like that is definitely intentional. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Let me see what the chat is saying about all this. Fascinating idea. The actor would love to see that. Yeah, yeah. And he describes Lucifer in those pages as different actors, and again, like past their prime, so to speak, like these very handsome dudes that were very popular once, and now are just a little past their prime. This is what I've been waiting for. Yeah, man.
Super.
Lucifer talk. But Lucifer was always referred to as the morning star and was considered the most beautiful.
That has become lost to a lot of common culture, though.
Yeah, everybody's thinking horns and pitchforks, and it's like, nah, man, he probably looks like a smoking hot like model dude who's gonna make your defenses drop as soon as you see him. You're gonna feel safe.
Well,
Love
no,
the
Lucifer,
depiction of Lucifer, so
the
different than the
TV show,
tropes.
it's Lucifer Morningstar
Yeah,
on the TV show.
and a strikingly handsome gentleman that guy is.
Yes. Yeah.
Especially the faded movie star references gives him a romantic fatalism. Yes, yes,
Yes, I
very,
agree.
very well worded. Yes.
My only fear, I got the references. I wonder if someone younger wouldn't have, though. Because I know my students have no clue who James Dean and all those guys are from that era. And I'm like, that's a choice. It's a good choice.
That crossed my mind too, because they always say if you put anything into your work that's from your current time or earlier, you do have to worry about dating your work and whether or not future readers will pick up on it.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point. I don't know, man. Like you're absolutely right that a lot of today's generation might not know who those people are. But I also feel like some of those names, James Dean, Clint Eastwood, are synonymous with Hollywood in general. So
My
even if you don't know the
reaction-
specific person, you get like the vibe of what he's, you know what I mean?
My greater reaction concern was if these references are going to continue throughout the book. So I'm curious to see if more will come up at the end, basically.
The blind spot is crucial to every book in the series. Also pushes that metaphor and forbidden. All
They
right.
put it together as one word. He put it together as one word.
Interesting. What are we
Everybody's putting
talking
blind
about?
spot together as one word.
The title, it influenced us.
In a live stream,
Oh,
he
there,
talked about
there,
every
she
character in
separated
the
it.
book having their own blind spot, whether about their character or line of. Ooh, now we're getting deep here. Never trust the pretty ones. Sage advice. Chapter 15 explains the blind spot and how Bayrit Doctor found it. The description of the tree was amazing. I love that
Yeah,
too.
me too.
James Dean would be known because of he is a meme now. Sure.
I keep forgetting he does have a meme.
Oh, everybody's got a meme.
Gotcha.
Kent used a
I
lot
didn't
of
know.
old
I
references
don't know
in his
memes.
short story collection too. It's a lot of nostalgia for the 70s and 80s. I like it. I like it. I like it. What was I gonna say earlier? Oh yeah, the thing with the tree with the doctor and the explanation of his blind spot and everything. When he like reached up and grabbed a couple of those green apples, all of a sudden the green stuff in the syringe like clicked in my brain, and I was like, oh, it's just the way that he's dropping these things as we go, setting them up and dropping them. Really nice, really nice. Let me see. Chapter 16 gives us some real serial killer demon talking to Lucifer type action with Shifty. Good stuff. Again, very Corinthian vibes in that. Chapter 17 gives us a cool car action sequence. What else?
Little light Michael Bay, I guess, is what I pictured in my head. Not so explosion-y, just
Sure.
how much racetrack did that cover is kind of where I'm going.
I'll have to figure it all out and get back to you. get the proper units.
He crammed a lot into a very small part for that chapter. Is kind of what I'm hitting.
He crams a lot into every chapter, I feel like, because they're so short and they read so briskly, but there's always just so much substance there. I really feel like
But again, not much time is elapsing.
Yeah, he just kind of he what's it called? He just crams a lot into a very small space. It's very interesting how he does it. I'm learning a lot reading his book, I'll tell you what. Let me see. Chapter 18, why he let Rehnquist get away with the Devil of LA thing. That was something that I wondered from the beginning. It was nice to see a character voice it. My quote from chapter 18 was how evil it dripped from him like motor oil. That visual, And
Yes,
finally,
again, using a
chapter.
noun
Oh,
that puts it in the time period.
exactly.
So
Yeah, and just equating evil to the motor oil. This is black, like oozing, like ugh. It's just like it creates such a striking image in your head. And chapter 19, the only thing I wrote was this chapter was insanity, horror, thriller at its finest. I when Shannon told me that she got to the end of chapter 19 and it was a cliffhanger, she had to read one more chapter. I was like, okay, let's see this cliffhanger. I got to the end of it and I really wanted to keep reading it. So it's
I
a
did
good
read one
one.
more chapter, but I stopped after that.
No, I stopped. I stopped at 19. I was like, I'm gonna be a good host and stop at 19.
It
But
was
it's touching.
so hard not to flip the page, though.
I've gotten so
I
many
did.
comments on the past Tuber Book Club video where people started reading and they read the whole book and they couldn't wait for this thing, so they dove into the next one. It's like it's a quick read and you can't put it down. The cliffhangers are awesome, really really good stuff. Shifty gives me the creeps.
Yes, me too.
Shifty transforming was gross,
Yes.
but oh my god, the
That was a
transformation
really
is
great scene. He
that's gonna
described that so well.
describing his limbs like spider legs, but like all the
Yes.
different
And
joints
I
and
was
oh
eating during that
I was
chapter
gonna
and I had
say,
to put it down.
yeah,
I've been reading this during lunch. Come on.
that's some horror stuff right there, man. That's some
Yes.
class A horror stuff. He showed me a draft for Forbidden once, I believe. I shouted, "There's how many chapters? Short chapters." Yeah. When I saw there was a lot of chapters, I was a little scared, but they move fast. They move at a clip. They move at a clip. Okay, so we've covered 19 chapters of this book, the first half, essentially. Let's take a look ahead. What are some questions that you guys want answered in the second half of this book? And if you have any theories, now's the time.
Well, I think I threw my theory out there. I think that John is not really in the body of Rehnquist. I think there was some type of like this mirror, this guilt mirror was thrown on Rehnquist to make him see through the lens of his last victim.
To sort of make him face his own soul, so to speak. His own
Right. Because,
sins.
Killers, they say they don't really have a lot of compassion or empathy for those who they've committed crimes against. And so in this way, it's kind of like making him, forcing him to have that empathy by seeing through John's eyes, even though that's where I keep thinking John's not really there.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That's a theory I have.
Yeah, I think you might be right, mostly because he killed John first, and then the thing happened. That's also a big clue that it's not really John in there. So you're probably right. That's a good theory.
And
Jenna?
if it is an absorption of, two minds, one body, who's going to win out?
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to have a solid meld if it is indeed two minds melding. I think it's going to get uglier.
Yeah.
Much uglier. And my question
checks out.
is, when's the spaghetti going to start getting thrown back to the other direction, and the retaliation going to start coming in a little bit more, I think, between the two minds?
Yeah, I'm anticipating a scene towards the end where John and Damien are at war within that body, and one of them is going to win, and it's probably not going to be who we hope.
And yeah.
And what about this, the blood, the green liquid
Yes.
that changes his
Yeah.
blood?
Yeah. When
That actually makes Rehnquist dangerous to most everybody who's celestial in this.
yeah, because when Shifty licks that blood, he basically poisoned himself. And it comes back to the idea that if it's derived from this sacred fruit that they're not supposed to eat because it would separate them from the holy, then that wow.
You know what happened to Eden and Adam, right?
Yeah. Yup. So much CGI for the movie. Aren't you Kent? Oh, is she? Well, welcome. Tell your daddy wrote a cool book. I doubt that he lets you read it because it's pretty dark. We aren't going to discuss.
Well, she's the one that said that she saw the draft for Forbidden
Oh,
ones.
that's okay. That's right. The blood is obviously.
Well,
flowing away, right?
he showed it to her, so maybe she didn't read it. But I don't know.
I forget how that I mean, she's been on his channel for a couple years now, so she's she's probably well versed in his writing by now. It's amazing how much Kent has us guessing. It's also amazing how much I'm enjoying it.
You think you figured it out? Nope.
Yeah. No, you don't. I was actually getting frustrated. The more it seemed like it was Rehnquist, the more I was getting worried that John was dead. Yeah, I think we're gonna have to say goodbye to John before this is all over. That's what
I
it's
think we've
feeling
already
like.
said goodbye.
Yeah, I mean, a
Maybe.
snap neck is pretty definitive, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, ladies, closing thoughts before we wrap it up for today.
Nothing is impossible in this book yet, and I'm not holding my breath on who may or may not die or who may or may not come back.
I
Or
probably
what
wouldn't
may
hold my
actually
breath.
be
Yeah,
happening.
yeah, yeah. How about you, Shannon?
Well, I've already gone to the next chapter, so I'm
Oh,
ready
yeah.
to finish the book.
Yeah, you're in it.
Yes, it was too much of a cliffhanger for me to stop there, especially
Yeah.
with that scene. So, yes, yeah, I'm completely open because I was like you guys in the beginning, where I felt like this is a battle between John and Rehnquist, and who's going to win out, because obviously John does not have a body to go back to if he does win. He's got now
He's
this
got
new
to, yeah, he's gonna have to
new
either
body.
stay in this one or that's it, or he's gone.
Yep.
Yeah,
And then how
absolutely.
is he going to live life at that point if that's the case? So, and then that, of course, that might not be the case. It could be my other working theory, but I'm open to whatever comes, because the one thing in play that we don't know what it does is that mirror. We don't know what that does exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
they
until
keep
we
bringing
figure
it up.
that out, we don't know what's going to happen.
And who's controlling it?
Well,
If there is a
we know that
control.
it was Rainwright, the Kanamarv Bar, however you say his
Right.
name. He's the one that had the mirror, but is it an actual object, or was it the word he said? Was
Yeah,
that
because
the
they
mirror?
made a very specific reference to the word he said, but they
Yes.
never like
Not an
described a
object.
physical object. Yeah.
Right. So it was
It
like
almost felt
like
like
a spell or something.
I was just gonna say it felt like speaking a spell or something like that.
Yeah.
What is a prayer but a spell?
Yeah, I mean it's there's all this idea of God being the logos, like the living word, and how power is in the word and everything. It's very, very interesting. I wanted to point out for Sylvie, my closing thought is that I can't believe this is a debut novel.
Yeah.
That's what I hope people say about my book. That would be an incredible compliment. You know what I mean? Like when you have a debut novel and people are like, "This is your first book," that's a home run. That's a home run. Let's see here. Awesome book, awesome stream. Thank you very much, Amber. Thank you for being here. Great book so far. Can't wait to read on. The Mirror. I need a pronunciation guide. Yeah, me too. Yeah. Folks, we were supposed to also have Colin Clark with us today, as well as T.E. Butcher. Both had to cancel, unfortunately, for different reasons. They both promised to be here next week, or not next week, but 2 weeks from now. I anticipate that stream to run a little longer with more co-hosts. The conversation should get a little fuller. Plus, we're going to want their thoughts on the first half that we didn't get this week. So expect the next episode to be a little longer than this one. I definitely did not expect to get through so much in so little time, but just like the book moves at a clip, talking about it kind of moves at a clip.
Yes, so do we.
One thing that I'm really, really impressed by with this book, as far as my closing thoughts are, once again, how quickly it moves, because I tend to write very thick chapters, very long, big books. My first novel, 150,000 words conservatively, maybe a little more. It's definitely, I love letting my characters sit in a moment, sometimes in chapters, letting things just kind of live and breathe in whatever is going on. It's something that I pick up from Breaking Bad and other things that I read like that. A Song of Ice and Fire has really big, long chapters. Every chapter feels like a short story. And that's kind of where I'm coming from with my writing. So it's very refreshing to sit down at a book that moves so quickly and has so much to offer in ways of thrills and everything. It's very, thriller is definitely the way to describe it, for sure. For sure. Okay. Shannon, let's say goodbye to everybody at home. Remind them where they can find more stuff from you.
Okay. Hello, everybody. You can find my YouTube channel under my same name of SC Houston, where I publish content on writing and self-publishing and my journey and what that looks like. Also, don't forget about the AuthorTube Writing Conference of 2022. Me and my partner, Jenna, we are putting this together. Currently, we're looking for guest speakers and speakers to sign up to do sessions on writing and publishing. And the conference will come to YouTube in July of this year. So there'll be a great event for anybody and everybody who is a writer or wants to publish or anywhere along that spectrum to come and attend all these great lectures that we'll see.
That sounds awesome. How about you, Jenna?
Again, I'm Jenna O'Malley, your soul writer. Thank you for being here. Thank you for having us this evening, Adrian, for sure.
My pleasure.
Check out this book. Check out any of the books of anyone here if you would like. Also, I guess see you in 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Yeah, that sounds about right to me. Everybody
Adrian,
in the chat.
thank you for having me. I forgot to say that. Thank you.
Oh, please. You don't have to thank me. Thank you guys for being here. This was fun. I'll have lots to say by the end. I'm sure you will. Later, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I'm saying goodbye to everybody in the chat because I love you guys so much. All right, y'all.
Bye.
Thank you, guys. Have a good one. Till next time, Write on Writers, and we're out.
Take care.
Yay.